He told her she was nothing. In the sterile gray office of the divorce lawyer, Sebastian Shaw told his wife Elena that her life was over. He mocked her, laughed at her, and told her she'd be nothing without his money. He watched her walk out into the lobby alone and defeated, expecting her to call a cheap taxi. But Sebastian waited. He waited to see her final humiliation. He just never expected the car that pulled up. He never expected the man who stepped out. And he never expected that the wife he'd just discarded was the one holding all the power. The air in the 48th floor conference room of Stanton and Hicks was worth more than most people's cars. It was filtered, scrubbed, and chilled to a precise 68 degrees, carrying the scent of old leather lemon oil and the faint metallic smell of ruthless ambition. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the Manhattan skyline was a jagged gray cutout against a bruised November sky. The silence in the room was a living thing, broken only by the whisper of expensive suit fabric and the quiet snick of a gold-plated pen cap being opened and closed. Elena Petrova sat on one side of a vast mahogany table that reflected the sky like a dark, still lake. She felt like a ghost haunting her own execution. Her hands were clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. Her coat, a simple practical wool coat from a department store, felt like a beggar's rag on the back of the $10,000 leather chair. Opposite her sat Sebastian Shaw, the man who had been her husband for 12 years, and sat was a generous term. He was lounging, radiating a smug, predatory confidence. His $8,000 Zegna suit was draped perfectly over his broad shoulders, his $30,000 Patek Philippe watch catching the cold light. He wasn't just in the room. He owned it. Beside him, his lawyer, a silver-haired shark named Mr. Crane, pushed a single sheet of paper across the table. Crane was the kind of man who had never lost, mostly because he only took cases that were already won. "And by signing here, Ms. Petrova," Crane purred, his voice a smooth, cultured baritone that belied the venom in his words, "you acknowledge the lump sum payment of $50,000 as a full, final, and irrevocable settlement of all spousal support claims, present, future, and potential. You also waive any and all claims to Mr. Shaw's businesses, properties, holdings, and private collections, as enumerated in Exhibit A." Elena's own lawyer, a kind but spectacularly outgunned public interest attorney named Sarah Jenkins, flinched. Sarah's suit was polyester and her briefcase was worn at the corners. She looked, Elena thought, with a pang of guilt, like a rowboat next to a destroyer. "Sebastian, this is insulting," Sarah said, her voice trembling slightly. $50,000. After 12 years, Elena supported your career. She managed your homes, your social calendar. She gave up her doctorate so you could move to New York for your first big deal. Sebastian let out a short, barking laugh that bounced off the wood-paneled walls. He leaned forward, tapping his gold Mont Blanc pen, a gift she had given him for their 5th anniversary, on the table. "She gave up what?" he scoffed, looking at Crane as if they were sharing a private joke. "That doctorate, wasn't it? In God, what was it, honey?" He snapped his fingers, pretending to search for the word. "Ah, yes. Florentine pigment sourcing. Are you kidding me?" He turned his dismissive gaze on Sarah. "Let's be blunt, Sarah. Who cares what kind of dirt they used to make the color blue 500 years ago? It's useless. Utterly, completely useless. Just like the art blog she runs. Does that even pay for the internet?" He leaned back, spreading his arms. "Let's call this what it is, Charity. I'm saving her. I took her out of a dusty, rent-controlled apartment in Chicago and gave her a life she could never have dreamed of. She flew on private jets, she wore designer clothes, which, by the way, I'm letting her keep generously, and she ate at restaurants you can't even get a reservation at. This $50,000, it's a golden parachute, Elena. It's a gift." He gestured to the window at the city below. "It'll get you a studio in, I don't know, Queens, for a few months anyway. Before you have to, get a job? Can you even do that? What's the market rate for pigment sourcing?" Mr. Crane smirked. Sarah flushed a deep, angry red. "You're a monster, Sebastian," Sarah whispered. "I'm a realist." Sebastian shot back his good humor, vanishing, replaced by a cold, hard edge. "She is 38 years old. She has no skills. She has no connections. She has no value in the marketplace. I am giving her $50,000 more than she is worth. Now sign the paper, Elena. I have a 2 o'clock tea time at Winged Foot with the board of Apex Holdings, and I don't intend to be late." Elena's eyes drifted from his face, from the cruel, handsome twist of his lips to the large abstract painting on the wall behind him. It was a terrible fake, a poor imitation of a Clifford still, all jagged, meaningless edges and no soul. It was a painting bought by the pound, designed to impress clients who knew nothing about art, but everything about its supposed price tag. Sebastian had bought it for $250,000 at a charity auction, boasting about it for weeks. Elena knew from one glance it was a studio knockoff worth perhaps $1,500. She had never told him. He never would have believed her. She closed her eyes, and a memory sharp and unwanted flashed in her mind. It was their 7th anniversary. She had just been offered a research fellowship at the Getty, the culmination of her PhD work. She was ecstatic. She told him over dinner at Per Se. Sebastian hadn't even looked up from his phone. "Los Angeles," he'd said, scrolling. "I don't do LA. Besides, I need you here. We're hosting the benefit for the new museum wing. You're in charge of the catering. Don't be selfish, Elena. Your little hobby can wait." It had waited. It had waited until it died. "Elena," Sarah's voice was soft, pulling her back. "We can fight. We can file for discovery. We can try to prove—" "And what will that cost, Sarah?" Elena asked, her voice a dry rasp. It was the first time she had spoken in an hour. "How many years? How many hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees that I don't have? I'll work pro bono, And he," Elena nodded at Sebastian, "will bury you in motions until you're disbarred. He'll bankrupt your little firm for sport. He's already done it." She looked at her husband. "You've already won, Sebastian. You won the day you met me." Sebastian's smile returned, broader this time. "See? She's smart after all. Just sign it, honey. Let's get on with our lives. Mine at least is going somewhere." Elena picked up the pen Sarah offered her. It was a cheap plastic ballpoint, its cap chewed. She looked at the signature line, Elena Shaw. With a slow, deliberate motion, she crossed out Shaw. She wrote her name, the name she was born with, the name she had forgotten. Elena Petrova. The ink was black and final. "There!" Sebastian boomed, clapping his hands together as he stood a conquering hero. "It's done, freedom for both of us. No hard feelings, A.L." He didn't wait for an answer. He motioned to Mr. Crane, who was already packing a pristine leather briefcase that cost more than Elena's entire settlement. "Send the final bill to my office. And Crane, good work. Let's play golf soon." Sebastian walked to the door, buttoning his suit jacket. He paused, his hand on the heavy brass handle, and looked back at Elena. She was still sitting, her hands clasped on the table, a statue of defeat. "Oh, and Elena," he said, a final casual twist of the knife. "That art blog of yours, Aurelius's Attic or whatever, I had my tech guy look at it. You have 12 followers. 12. It's pathetic. My dog's Instagram has 5,000. He smirked. "Just a piece of advice from someone who knows. Give it up. Nobody cares. You have nothing to say." He was gone. The door clicked shut, the sound echoing in the oppressive, expensive silence. For a full minute, neither Elena nor Sarah moved. Then Sarah reached out and put a hand over Elena's. "Elena, are you—" "I'm fine," Elena said. Her voice was surprisingly steady. The numbness was a shield. I need to go. Thank you for everything, Sarah." "The check will be mailed." Sarah said, her voice full of a pity that Elena found harder to bear than Sebastian's cruelty. "You can call me any time. Any time at all." Elena nodded, grabbed her simple cloth coat from the back of the chair, and walked out of the room. She didn't look at the fake painting. She didn't look at the view. She just walked. She walked past the row of associate offices, past the law library, and toward the elevator bank, her practical scuffed heel boots making no sound on the plush, mile-deep carpet. The elevator ride down was a descent into a different kind of hell. It was silent, mirrored, and played a soft classical tune that made Elena want to scream. She clutched the strap of her worn leather handbag, the one Sebastian had always called her orphan bag. She stepped out into the lobby of Stanton and Hicks. It wasn't a room. It was an abyss. A 3-story atrium of white Calicut marble, brushed steel, and uncomfortable-looking leather sofas that no one had ever in the history of the building sat on. The only sign of life was a terrifyingly chic receptionist, a woman who looked like she had been carved from ice, sitting behind a desk that resembled a fragment of a glacier. Her name, according to the small, severe plaque on her desk, was Ms. Vane. Ms. Vane looked up as Elena approached, her expression a perfect, polite mask of disinterest that was somehow worse than open mockery. She judged in a single millisecond Elena's coat, her bag, her lack of jewelry, and her rain-dampened hair, and dismissed her as irrelevant. Elena walked toward the revolving glass doors, pulling her coat tight. It was raining outside, a hard-driving November rain that turned the taxis on Park Avenue into frantic yellow blurs. She'd have to wait. She moved to the side, standing near a towering, leafless plant in a steel planter, trying to become as small and invisible as possible. She pulled out her phone. The battery was at 14%. She opened the Uber app, her fingers shaking slightly. Connecting. The app spun. And spun. The signal in the marble and steel canyon was terrible. No cars available. She tried Lyft. Connecting. Ding. Elena's heart seized. She didn't have to look. She could feel the sudden magnetic pull of his arrogance sucking the air out of her corner of the lobby. Sebastian emerged from the elevator bank, adjusting his perfect silk tie. He saw her. Of course he saw her. He had an animal's instinct for weakness, and right now she was broadcasting it on every frequency. He sauntered over, a lazy, satisfied smile playing on his lips. "Oh, you're still here, tough getting a cab in this weather, I guess." Elena said nothing, just stared at her phone, at the useless spinning wheel. Come on," she whispered to the machine. "What's the plan, Elena?" He pushed, clearly enjoying this. He was in no hurry. His tea time was a lie. It was pouring. This was his entertainment. He wanted to watch the final pathetic scene of her defeat. "Waiting for the M train. I hope you have a Metro card. Or is that part of the settlement?" He chuckled at his own joke. "Don't tell me you can't even afford an Uber." Elena's face flushed. She jammed her phone back into her bag, her eyes stinging. This was the humiliation he had wanted. "Here," he said. Elena looked up. Sebastian was reaching into the pocket of his trousers. He pulled out a thick folded wad of cash, his walking around money. He peeled off a single crisp $100 bill. He held it out to her, waggling it between two fingers. Ms. Vane, the ICE receptionist, was watching now. She was pretending to type, but her eyes were fixed on the scene. "For the ride," Sebastian said, his voice dripping with mock charity. "Call it a parting gift. Go on, take it. You've earned something." This was it. This was the bottom. To be treated like a charity case, a panhandler, by the man she had spent 12 years building, 12 years supporting. The man whose entire public persona, the cultured real estate mogul, she had built from scratch. She had taught him which fork to use. She had taught him the difference between a Monet and a Manet. She had written the witty speeches he gave at benefits, the ones that got him on the boards of museums. And here he was, offering her cab fare. "I'm not waiting for a taxi, Sebastian," she said, her voice low and tight. He blinked, his smile faltering for just a second. "Oh," he laughed, recovering. "Right. Who's picking you up? That book club friend of yours? What's her name, Janet?" In her 20-year-old Subaru. That should be a fun ride back to wherever it is you're going. Someone is picking me up, she repeated, her voice flat. She turned her back to him, facing the rain-lashed glass. Ooh, a mystery, Sebastian mocked. He leaned against a nearby marble pillar, crossing his arms. He was settling in. This is just too good. The great escape of Elena Petrova. He pulled out his own phone, a brand-new $2,000 model, and started texting. He was probably texting his new girlfriend, a 24-year-old fitness model named Candy. You won't believe this. The ex is standing in the lobby like a drowned rat. Hilarious. Elena closed her eyes. She focused on her breathing. In, out. She thought of what he'd said. Your blog. 12 followers. It's pathetic. He didn't know. He couldn't in his wildest dreams comprehend it. Aurelius's attic was pathetic. It was meant to be. It was the perfect boring academic cover for her real work. The work she did on a completely different encrypted invitation-only forum. The work she did as E. Petrova, the anonymous online analyst who had for the last 3 years been the most respected and feared authenticator in the private art world. She thought of Aurelius, the anonymous user who had first contacted her. He'd posted a high-resolution image of a supposed 15th-century Dutch painting asking for opinions. The experts at Sotheby's and the Getty had declared it a fake. Elena, from her kitchen counter in New York, had spent 72 hours analyzing the digital images. She'd looked at the chemical composition of the pigments, the craquelure of the varnish, the underdrawing. She had sent Aurelius a simple private message. It's not a fake. It's a pastiche. The sky was painted over in the 17th century, but the figures, the hands, that's the lost work of Jan van Eyck's top apprentice. The signature isn't on the canvas. It's in the way he mixed lead tin yellow with his varnish. Look closer. 2 days later, she received a reply. They looked. You were right. You just saved me $40 million. Who are you? That was 3 years ago. Her forum friend Aurelius had become her lifeline. A mind that matched hers. A man who, unlike her husband, listened. He sent her queries from museums, from private collectors. Is this Romanov jewel real? Is this supposed Rembrandt a studio work? And she would tell him. Her useless information, her 16th century dirt, was her secret. It was the only thing that had kept her sane. A minute passed. Then 2. The rain lashed. Sebastian was still there, a smug gargoyle against the marble. 5 minutes. Elena's stomach clenched. He said he would be here. He promised. Sebastian chuckled, pushing off the pillar. Well, this has been fun, Elle, but I'm getting bored. Looks like your mystery ride is a no-show. Shocking. Go on, take the 100. Get yourself out of the rain. He tossed the bill onto the floor at her feet. It landed on the wet, muddy patch where people had shaken their umbrellas. Call me? He said with a final pitying glance. When you're desperate, you will be. He started to walk toward the revolving door, and just as his hand touched the glass, a new sound cut through the lobby's silence. It was not the sound of a taxi horn or a bus. It was the sound of a very large, very expensive engine idling at a frequency so low you felt it in your bones before you heard it. Sebastian stopped. He turned. Ms. Vane, the receptionist who had seen presidents and oligarchs pass through these doors, actually stood up. It glided to the curb with the silent, predatory grace of a panther. It wasn't a car, it was a statement. A Rolls-Royce Phantom long wheelbase, in a shade of midnight blue so deep it looked black in the rain. It wasn't just new, it was custom. It was the kind of vehicle that didn't just suggest wealth, it suggested power. The kind of power that didn't need to announce itself. Sebastian stopped, his hand still on the revolving door. His mouth fell open slightly. Damn, he muttered, impressed. Must be Mr. Hicks. I heard he was getting a new one. He was talking to himself, to Elena, to anyone. He was impressed and a little jealous. It was a better car than his own Maybach. The car sat at the curb, its engine a quiet rumble. The rain seemed to be afraid of it, the water beating and fleeing from the flawless ceramic-coated paint. The spirit of ecstasy ornament on the hood seemed to glow with its own internal light. Then the driver's door opened. A man in a perfectly tailored black uniform and chauffeur's cap stepped out. He was tall, built like a former Special Forces operator, and moved with an efficiency that was almost military. He opened a large black reinforced umbrella, the kind that could probably stop a bullet, and walked not to the main revolving doors but directly to the side door where Elena was standing. Sebastian, who was still frozen mid-exit, physically pushed himself upright. His confusion was rapidly turning to shock. He wasn't going for Mr. Hicks. The driver Arthur stopped a perfect 3 feet from Elena. He was on the outside of the glass. She was on the inside. He didn't speak. He just looked at her and gave a small, respectful nod. Elena nodded back. The knot of fear in her stomach dissolved, replaced by a profound, steadying calm. She pushed the glass door open. Arthur immediately angled the umbrella to cover her, shielding her from the downpour. He said nothing. Sebastian's jaw was now officially slack. He watched as Elena, his useless, penniless ex-wife, was sheltered by a private driver from a $700,000 car. "What the hell?" Sebastian whispered. But it was what happened next that shattered his reality. The driver didn't open the door for her. Instead, he turned and opened the rear door, as if he had been waiting for a cue, and a man stepped out. He emerged from the car, not in a hurry, but with a deliberate, unassailable calm. He emerged into the pouring rain as if the weather would not dare to inconvenience him. He was tall, with dark hair cut short and neat. He wore no tie, just a dark gray cashmere turtleneck under a bespoke Loro Piana overcoat that probably cost more than Elena's entire settlement. His face was sharp, intelligent, and held an expression of such profound, focused intensity that Sebastian felt a jolt of actual physical fear. He was a man who didn't just walk into rooms. He claimed them. Sebastian knew this face. His blood ran cold. He felt a prickle of sweat on his neck despite the lobby's chill. He knew this face from the most exclusive high-stakes issues of Forbes and The Economist. He knew it from hushed whispers at billion-dollar conferences. It was Damian Valerius. The Damian Valerius. The reclusive, almost mythical founder of Valerius Logistics, the man who had revolutionized global shipping and data transfer. A man who bought and sold companies the way Sebastian bought golf clubs. A man whose personal net worth was rumored to be in the 12-figure range. A man Sebastian's own firm, Shaw Real Estate, had been trying to get a meeting with just a 15-minute pitch for 18 months to fund their new flagship development, the Shaw Tower. They had been rejected, stonewalled, and ignored at every turn. What is happening? Sebastian's mind was a screaming void. Is he here for Hicks? Did he just see Elena? Is this a mistake? Damian Valerius ignored the rain. He ignored the driver. He ignored the entire city of New York. His gaze, an intense, piercing blue, was locked on one person and one person only. Elena. He walked toward her. The driver, Arthur, stayed by the car. Sebastian, his mind racing and failing, stumbled forward. He was a networker, a shark. This was an opportunity. He didn't know what it was, but his instincts addled as they were screamed at him to do something. "Mr. Valerius," he called out, pushing through the door into the rain, his Zegna suit immediately darkening. He jogged the few steps, a desperate, fawning smile plastered on his face. "Mr. Valerius, Sebastian Shaw from Shaw Real Estate. I've been sending my prospectus to your office for—" Damian Valerius didn't even turn his head. He didn't slow down. He walked right past Sebastian as if he were a piece of street furniture, a lamppost, a fire hydrant. He stopped in front of Elena. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched the corners of his mouth. It was a smile of such genuine warmth and respect that it transformed his severe face. "Elena," he said. His voice was a smooth, cultured baritone. "I trust everything is concluded." Elena let out a breath she felt she had been holding for 12 years. The tension drained from her shoulders. The shame, the humiliation, the coldness of the lobby, it all evaporated. "Yes, Damien," she said, her own voice steady and clear. "It's done." "Good," he said. He gestured to the open door of the Rolls-Royce. "Then let's get you out of this rain. Your new life is waiting." My life. This was Sebastian stammering, his brain catching fire. He was rain-soaked now, his expensive hair plastered to his forehead. He looked pathetic. He was standing in a puddle, his $200 Italian leather shoes ruined. "Elena, you know Mr. Valerius." This time Elena turned to look at him. She looked at this man who had called her useless, who had thrown a $100 bill at her feet. There was no anger in her eyes, no hatred. There was only pity, a cool, distant pity. "You never listened to me, Sebastian," she said, her voice quiet but carrying over the rain. "You never once asked about my work. You just laughed." "Your work," he spluttered. "Your blog, how does..." It was then that Damien Valerius finally acknowledged Sebastian's existence. He turned his head slowly, his blue eyes narrowing. His gaze was not a gaze. It was a physical force. It was the look a biologist gives a specimen under a microscope just before dissecting it. He looked Sebastian Shaw up and down from his soaked suit to his terrified, confused eyes. "Mr. Shaw," Damien said, his voice dropping 10 degrees. Sebastian brightened, desperate. Yes, Mr. Valerius. We should talk. You are the man who called my chief curator's research 16th century dirt." Sebastian's mouth opened, but no sound came out. He just goggled. "Chief? Curator. You are the man," Damien continued, his voice lethally soft, "who dismissed the most brilliant mind in pigment analysis and art forensics I have ever encountered as a housewife." He took a step closer. Sebastian, a man who intimidated everyone, took an involuntary step back. "And you are the man who..." Damien's eyes flicked to the damp $100 bill lying on the pavement near the door. "Just tried to give a parting gift to a woman who, as of 900 a.m. this morning, has a research and acquisition budget of $200 million. Sebastian was white. He was shaking. $200 million. "Elena," Damien said, turning his back on Sebastian, completely a final, brutal dismissal. "We'll be late for the flight." He gently, respectfully placed a hand on the small of her back and guided her to the car. Arthur, the driver, held the door. Elena paused just for a second. She looked back at the shell of a man on the sidewalk, a man drowning in a puddle of his own arrogance. She said nothing. She got into the car. Damien followed, settling in beside her. Arthur closed the door. It made a sound like a bank vault sealing a heavy, satisfying thunk. Inside there was only silence. The car pulled away from the curb, its movement so smooth it felt like floating. It merged into the Park Avenue traffic and in seconds was gone. Sebastian Shaw was left alone on the sidewalk in the pouring rain in front of the iceberg receptionist, Ms. Vane, who had seen it all. He was still holding his useless phone. He looked down at the $100 bill on the wet marble. He had never in his entire life felt so small. The inside of the Rolls-Royce was not an interior. It was a sanctuary. The rain that hammered the city just inches away was completely inaudible. There was only the faint scent of old leather and new technology and the soft, warm glow of the internal lights. Elena leaned her head back against the plush leather and closed her eyes. "Are you all right, Elena?" Damien asked. His voice was gentle now, all the ice reserved for the man on the sidewalk. "I am," she breathed, opening her eyes. "I'm free." "I am sorry for your ordeal," he said. He is a spectacularly small man. "You have no idea," Elena murmured. She looked at him, the man she had known for 3 years, but had only met in person twice. "Are you sure you want me for this, Damien, after seeing that? What I came from?" Damien turned in his seat to face her. "Elena," he said, his expression serious. Let me be precise. 3 years ago, I acquired a 15th century Dutch painting at a private auction. My own experts, the best at the Getty and the Rijksmuseum, were convinced it was a fake from a later period. The provenance was a mess. They told me I had wasted $40 million. He paused, a flicker of a smile. Then I found an anonymous online forum for art historians, and I found a user named E. Petrova. She was in a heated debate with a professor from Oxford about the use of azurite in early Renaissance work. I remember that. Elena smiled. Professor Miles. He was insufferable and wrong. So I took a risk, Damien continued. I created an account, Aurelius. I posted high-resolution images of my fake painting. And I asked one question, what do you see? And I told you, Elena said, her voice gaining strength, that it wasn't a fake. It was a pastiche. The sky was painted in the 17th century, but the figures, the hands, the underdrawing, that was 15th century. Someone had updated it to match the style of the time. But the original artist's fingerprint was right there in the way he mixed lead tin yellow with his varnish. You saw in 2 days what an entire team of experts couldn't see in 6 months, Damien said. You, Elena Petrova, saved my Vermeer. That painting is now the pride of my collection. And you are the only person I trust to manage it. The only one. He gestured out the window. The car was now on the FDR Drive, speeding toward the highway. Your ordeal, as you call it, is over. Sebastian Shaw was a temporary inconvenience. Your work is permanent. The Valerius Foundation's entire collection is now yours to command. The jet is waiting at Teterboro. We will be in Geneva by morning. Your new apartment is ready. The restoration lab, the one you designed via email, is fully stocked. The X-ray fluorescence spectrometer you wanted just arrived from Germany. Elena looked at her hands. The hands Sebastian had mocked for not being manicured. The hands that in college had been stained with pigment and linseed oil. They were steady now. He called my work dirt, she whispered. We are all dirt. Elena, Damien said, looking out at the East River. The only difference is what we choose to build with it. He built a house of cards. You are building a cathedral. For the first time in more than a decade, Elena Petrova truly completely smiled. Sebastian Shaw did not go to winged foot. He went back to his empty penthouse apartment, the one Elena had been ordered to vacate a month prior, and drank. He drank an entire bottle of 25-year-old Macallan, but the alcohol couldn't burn away the image of Damien Valerius's eyes. Chief curator, $200 million. The words echoed in his head, nonsensical. It was a joke. It had to be a prank. Elena, his Elena, the quiet, mousy woman who reorganized his bookshelves. On Monday, he went to the office hungover and furious. He barked at his assistant. Get me a meeting with Damien Valerius, now. Tell them I'm a personal friend of Elena Petrova. His assistant, a sharp young woman named Chloe, looked confused. Elena Petrova, sir, isn't that... Just do it, he roared. An hour later, Chloe buzzed him. Mr. Shaw, Mr. Valerius's office. They said they have no idea who you are. And they added a message. What? What message? They said, Ms. Petrova is no longer associated with you in any way, and any further attempts at contact will be forwarded to our legal department. Sebastian slammed the phone down. Legal department. His ex-wife was sicking Valerius's legal department on him. That was just the beginning. 2 days later, the call came. It was from his contact at J.P. Morgan Chase, the primary lender for his new flagship skyscraper, the Shaw Tower. Sebastian, the banker, a man named Mark, said, his voice tense. We have a problem. A big one. What? What problem? Your financing. The private equity firm that was backing the main loan, Apex Holdings, they've been acquired. Sebastian felt a cold dread. Acquired by who? Who would be big enough to buy Apex overnight? Valerius Logistics. Mark said, his voice barely a whisper. Sebastian, they're not just acquiring, they're liquidating. They called our loan, all of it. They want the full $400 million by the end of the quarter, or they take the asset. They can't, Sebastian screamed. The building's not even halfway done. That's insane. It's unethical. It's not, Sebastian. It's in the fine print. And Valerius, he owns the fine print. He's not just a buyer. He's a predator. Someone painted a target on your back. You'd better find new financing fast. But the word was out. Sebastian Shaw was toxic. He scrambled. He called every contact he had. But the name Valerius was a brick wall. No one would touch him. The lines of credit he had lived on for a decade vanished. His partners, smelling blood in the water, began to sue, desperate to get their money out before the entire ship sank. He was in his office 3 weeks after the divorce when the full horrifying realization hit him. He was staring at a photo from a company party 5 years ago. He was there, arm around a politician, glass of champagne in hand, and in the background by the food was Elena. She was on her laptop, always on that damned laptop. He remembered that night. He had been boasting loudly about how he'd creatively leveraged the Apex Holdings deal, how he'd hidden the risk in a series of offshore accounts. He thought she was just checking email. He told me I was a specialist in useless information. He said I paid too much attention to boring details. His blood turned to ice. He staggered to his desk and opened his own financial records. The account numbers, the timelines, the shell corporations. She hadn't just been listening. She had been documenting. He thought of Aurelius, her forum friend, the man she had been talking to with religious devotion for years. It was him. It was Valerius. She was talking to him the whole time. She hadn't just known him. She hadn't just met him. She had been feeding him the information. She had handed Damien Valerius the knife, and he had gleefully used it to sever Sebastian's financial arteries. The divorce settlement, the paltry $50,000. It wasn't an insult. It was a distraction. She didn't want his money. She wanted to watch him burn. Sebastian Shaw, the man who prided himself on seeing every angle, had been played. He hadn't been divorced by a mousy housewife. He had been surgically dismantled by a master strategist. 6 months later, Sebastian Shaw was a ghost. A whisper. The name on the half-finished, rust-stained skeleton of the Shaw Tower had been covered by a massive banner that simply read, "Future site of the Valerius Data Center." His company was in receivership. His penthouse sold at a humiliating loss to pay off creditors. His Maybach repossessed. His 24-year-old girlfriend, Candy, had vanished the moment his Amex was declined. He was living in a short-term rental in Murray Hill, a place he would have once contemptuously flown over in his helicopter. He'd sold his Rolex and his Patek Philippe. He'd sold his Zegna suits to a consignment shop. He was at Ashby's auction house that night, not as a bidder, but on a guest pass from a junior associate who owed him an old, forgotten favor. He was there to network, to beg to be seen, to prove he wasn't dead. He was there to find anyone who would still take his call. The room was electric. The centerpiece of the auction was a recently rediscovered masterpiece, The Calling of St. Peter, attributed to a minor follower of Caravaggio, but rumored by the art world's most elite gossips to be by the master himself. Sebastian stood in the back by the champagne bar, nursing a single free glass. He looked haggard. His suit was off the rack. He was invisible, and he knew it. The bidding was frantic, a blur of paddles from collectors in the room and flashing lights from the phone banks representing anonymous global billionaires. "50 million, cried the auctioneer, a man named Simon. 55 from the front row. 65 from the phone. 70-75. The bids climbed, each one a hammer blow. $90 million from the bidder in London. Do I hear 95? A hush. 95, Gary. came a call from another phone bank. 95 million going once, going twice. 100 million. The voice didn't come from a phone. It came from a new bidder who had just signaled. The entire room turned. It was a representative from the Getty. The bidding war was now a blood sport. The London phone bank countered. 105 million. Sold, the auctioneer cried, slamming his gavel after a tense, breathless pause. Sold for $105 million to the anonymous bidder on phone line 4. A wave of applause. Sebastian just felt numb. It was money he couldn't even comprehend anymore. And now, the auctioneer said, his face flushed with excitement, to speak about the painting's future and its exciting new home, we have a representative from the buyer, the Valerius Foundation. Sebastian's heart stopped. A woman walked from the wings onto the stage. It was Elena. But it was not the Elena he knew. This woman was a different being. She wore a simple, impossibly elegant dark blue suit by Acris. Her hair was pulled back in a severe professional bun that highlighted her intelligent eyes. She wore no jewelry except for a simple watch. She radiated an authority so profound the entire room went silent. She walked to the podium, and her voice, clear and confident, filled the hall. Thank you. On behalf of the Valerius Foundation, I am thrilled to announce that the Calling of St. Peter, which our research has now definitively confirmed, is an early lost Caravaggio, will be the new centerpiece of our public wing in Geneva. The room erupted. This was news. This was history. She hadn't just bought it. She had confirmed it. She was the story. Following a 6-month restoration, she continued, which I will personally oversee, the painting will be unveiled to the public free of charge for all to study and enjoy. The applause was deafening. Curators from the Met, the Louvre, and the Getty were on their feet. They flocked to the stage as she stepped down, all desperate for a moment with her. Ms. Petrova, the new kingmaker of the art world. Sebastian was in the back by the bar, invisible. She and her security detail, including Arthur the driver, began to walk toward the exit. She was going to pass right by him. She has to see me, he thought, a desperate, pathetic hope. She has to see what she's done. Her group approached. He tensed. Elena was in a deep conversation with the director of the National Gallery, her face animated as they discussed X-ray tomography. She was 5 feet from him. She passed him. She didn't stop. She didn't slow down. She didn't look. Her eyes never flickered. It wasn't that she looked at him and dismissed him. That would have been something. That would have been a connection. No. She didn't see him at all. He was to her nothing. A piece of the wall. A shadow in a room full of light. Elena Petrova walked out of Ashby's, her heels clicking decisively on the marble floor, leaving Sebastian Shaw alone in the ruins of the life he thought he owned. A year later, Geneva, Switzerland. The Valerius Foundation's restoration lab, perched on the top floor of a glass and steel building overlooking the lake, was not a room. It was Elena Petrova's mind made manifest. The air was not air. It was a carefully curated atmosphere, humidified to a precise 45%, filtered of all pollutants and kept at a constant 70 degrees. The silence was not an absence of sound, but a presence, the gentle thrumming hum of the high-powered ventilation, the quiet click and whir of the X-ray fluorescence spectrometer, the whisper of the climate control systems. Elena, dressed in a white lab coat, was bent over a large 16th-century panel painting. To the untrained eye, it was a competent, if uninspired portrait titled, "The Duchess of Orleans at Prayer." It showed a pale, pious woman, eyes cast demurely downward. It was, in a word, boring. But Elena wasn't looking at the surface. Beside her, a high-resolution 8K monitor displayed what her XRF spectrometer was seeing, and what it saw was a ghost. Beneath the dull browns of the Duchess's dress, beneath the pious flesh of her face, another painting was screaming to be seen. A secret, defiant act of creation by a woman artist, Marina, whose name Elena had found on a single dismissive shipping manifest from 1588. Her work had been deemed too bold, and had been unceremoniously painted over by a male apprentice. Elena was not just restoring a painting, she was performing a resurrection. The pneumatic door to the lab hissed open. Damien Valerius walked in. He held 2 cups of coffee. He placed one on the sterile steel counter a safe distance from the workspace. "How is she today, Elena?" "She's angry," Elena murmured, not turning away from the monitor. He used a cheap, unstable azurite to cover her sky. The fool! He was in such a hurry to erase her, his work is cracking. Hers is as stable as the day she painted it. "A common theme," Damien said, taking a sip of his own coffee. "Insecure men in a hurry." He sat on a stool watching her. Theirs was not a romance. It was an alliance of 2 minds that operated on the same frequency. After a long moment, Damien set his cup down. "I received the final report from the SEC on the Shaw case this morning. It's officially closed." Elena's hand, which was adjusting the spectrometer's focus, did not tremble. But it did for a second pause. "He's been barred," Damien continued, reading from his tablet. "For life. Barred from trading. Barred from sitting on any board. The final seizure of assets is complete. They took everything." Elena finally turned. Her eyes were clear. There was only finality. "Good." Damien watched her. "There's something I've been meaning to ask you. I was speaking with the lead investigator. He told me the anonymous submission that started it all. He called it the Rosetta Stone of white-collar crime." Elena took a sip of coffee. She said nothing. "He told me," Damien went on, "that it was the most perfect self-contained data set he had ever seen. Not just accusations, proof, timelines, offshore account numbers, coded transaction logs from his private ledger, details so boring, that no one but an accountant would ever have looked at them, and even then they'd need a key." He looked directly at her. "The file that broke the case. It was an encrypted spreadsheet. It perfectly cross-referenced every single illegal transfer with Sebastian's public calendar, his private travel receipts, and even his restaurant reservations." Elena's mind flashed back. A Tuesday night 4 years ago. Sebastian drunk on scotch at his massive, ostentatious desk. He'd been laughing on the phone. The beauty of it is that it's all just boring details. No one looks at the details. He'd hung up, seen her, and scoffed. He'd tossed a stack of printed ledgers at her. "Here, make yourself useful. File these. It's just numbers. Simple enough even for you." He had turned back to his computer. And she had knelt. She had gathered the papers. And she had looked. She who could spot a forgery from 500 years ago saw the sloppy, fraudulent pattern instantly. That night she bought an encrypted USB drive and hid it in a hollowed-out book. And for 3 years, every time he mocked her, she had added a line to her spreadsheet. She called the file the Shaw Pastiche. Now, in the clean, bright light of her new life, she looked at Damien. "He was right," she said quietly. "He told me over and over that I was just a specialist in useless information." "He presented you with a forgery," Damien said. "A forgery of a life, a forgery of a business. And you did what you always do. You looked for the original." "A very, very ugly original," Elena murmured. "He was sloppy. Men like Sebastian always are. They're all surface." She set her coffee cup down and slipped her goggles back on. It was time to get back to work. "The investigator had one last question," Damien said. "He wanted to know who you were. I told him, a concerned citizen." Elena smiled a real full smile. "That works." She turned back to the XRF monitor. The image of the hidden woman, Marina, stared back at her. A woman who had been silenced, buried under a layer of acceptable, boring mediocrity. "You'll have her out by spring," Damien said. "Oh, much sooner," Elena replied. She picked up a fine-tipped tool, her hand as steady as a surgeon's. The varnish she used to cover her. "It's unstable. It's practically begging to be removed." She looked at the screen at the ghost of Marina and felt a profound connection across 5 centuries. "He was right about one thing, Damien," she said, her voice a soft, satisfied whisper. "What's that?" "I do pay very, very close attention to the boring details." She touched the tool to the canvas, and with the first definitive move began the delicate work of bringing the truth to light. And that right there is the difference between price and value. Sebastian Shaw knew the price of everything: his suits, his cars, his wives. But Elena knew the value of everything, of knowledge, of patience, and most importantly, of herself. The greatest revenge isn't getting loud, it's getting powerful. It's not about being saved by a billionaire. It's about being the person even a billionaire turns to for expertise. Her victory wasn't the car. It was the fact that she had earned the right to be in it. What did you think of Elena's story? Do you believe the greatest comebacks are the quietest ones? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to be reminded of their own value, and subscribe for more stories of justice and unexpected twists. We read every comment. Thanks for listening.